Hey guys, Tim Melvin of Banking on Profits coming to you from down here in what is turning into a windy summer sunny afternoon in central Florida. I guess we probably got some afternoon storms and whatnot heading over this way, but that's pretty normal for this time of year down here. So anyway, we had quite a weekend around the house this weekend. Those of you that have been with me, reading me my stuff and watching these silly videos for a while, know that my wife's family is located in, you guessed it, Rockport, Texas, is where her dad lives. And her brother is actually a police officer in Corpus Christi. So and they've got family all over the area. They've got some family in Victoria, San Antonio. And I have a lot of friends in Houston that I've gotten to know over the years. And so we've had kind of, it's been a nervous weekend. Everybody did evacuate except for the police captain. He had to stay behind and do the dirty work that the first responders have had to do all weekend. So she was nervous. We were in touch with everybody by phone. Didn't find out till yesterday how her dad's house, which is waterfront in Rockport, actually fared, and we got a very pleasant surprise. Personally, having seen the initial footage out of Rockport, Texas, I would not have expected there to be a house. He's going to need a new roof, going to have to replace a few windows that got broken, including his Pelican stained glass window, which was like one of my favorites. But all in all, pretty minor. And once they get electricity and water and clear the tremendous amount of debris off the roads, he'll actually be able to return home and take residents back up down there, looking out over the bay towards the Gulf of Mexico. It's a beautiful spot. We go down there usually about once a year. We'll take a family vacation down there. We were just in Port Aransas, which was devastated. We were just down there for a week, and that's just a great little beach town on the Texas coast. Hopefully they're able to rebuild in a reasonable time and fashion, but it's certainly a mess down there. Our thoughts go out to everybody down there, and we hope they find a way to stay dry and rescue all those folks that are stranded. And of course, on the bright side, I broke down, I did it. My son kind of urged me. He thought it would be better to spend Dad's $100 than his own. We got the Mayweather-McGregor fight, and it was a much better fight than I thought it was going to be. I gave McGregor a puncher's chance in a fight, not enough that I would have bet on it, but all in all, a better boxing exhibition than I think any of us could have possibly anticipated. Had some friends over to watch it, a lot of good food, a couple good bottles of wine. All in all, just a fantastic Saturday night. And then, of course, last night, Game of Thrones season finale. Now, we're Game of Thrones junkie. It's going to be a long time till we get our next fill of Game of Thrones, so say maybe as late as 2019. But the season finale, what an episode. That was fun to watch last night. So interesting mixed weekend. Lots going on around here over the weekend. Looking forward to the upcoming Labor Day weekend. Maybe we can take it at a little bit of a slower pace this time around. So anyway, driving around the other day, kind of driving around here in Central Florida, and I noticed a house, for sale sign out, and then I saw something that I haven't seen since 2006, maybe 2007. Home for sale, XYZ Realty, financing available. Not too long after that, I heard on the radio, a subprime mortgage loan commercial. So, it's happening. And here's what's going on in the housing and mortgage market. In the housing market, there is not enough existing homes to fill demand, and they're really not able to build homes fast enough to fill the overall demand that's emerging for housing right now. So prices have moved up substantially. Now, the upper end of the market, it's fine. They're able to sell one upper end home to buy an even more upper end home. That part of the market doing just fine. The affordability is not an issue for those folks, so they can get their transactions done. However, that first-time home buyer, the first-time move-up buyer, they're out of the market right now because of affordability issues. They can't find anything that they can afford. So, and when we have affordability issues, there's a couple things banks can do. Live with the fact that residential mortgage loan demand is going to be flat for a while until everything evens out, or find really stupid ways to make bad loans that appear to be on the front end extraordinarily profitable but have a default risk. Now, The loans I'm seeing right now are not from banks. They're from private mortgage, providers. Eventually, some banker's going to look at this and say, wow, they are really capturing a huge spread on those loans. Maybe we should do that. That will be the end of what has been a very nice credit cycle over the last couple of years, where we've had virtually no loan losses to have to worry about. The mortgage portfolios have done fantastic. I've said it all along. Bankers will eventually do something stupid. This time is no different. This is just the very first peek at the stupidity to come. We'll be watching it very carefully, and if any of our banks get into the subprime or substandard mortgage market, we will immediately sell our shares of that bank, no matter how profitable they may appear to be at a given moment in time. So just something to watch. Housing prices stay inflated until we get a supply-demand balancing. It's going to get tempting to make these silly loans, and we probably are going to see some sort of subprime mortgage comeback. After all, it's been about 8 years since the financial crisis, and memories in banking and Wall Street are extraordinarily short. So keep your eye out for it, and I'll be watching our portfolio banks very carefully for any type of lending irregularities or just outright stupidity in the months and weeks to come. Anyway, we had Jackson Hole on Thursday and Friday, the central bank meeting out there in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and everybody on Wall Street watches it like a hawk. I have no idea why, because it's very rare for anything of import to come out of that meeting, and this meeting was no different. None of the central bankers that spoke, most notably Mario Draghi and Janet Yellen, gave any indication of what they may do with policy in the short run. Ms. Yellen focused her remarks primarily on regulation and the need for the regulations put in place after the financial crisis to not be rolled back, as the banking industry, President Trump and me, would like to see done. They're very onerous. They add enormous amounts of paperwork and cost to the bank structure, and I don't know that they've really done anything to make lending portfolios that much safer. Mr. Draghi, he spent most of his time talking about the dangers of protectionism, taking shots, of course, at President Trump and at the impending Brexit in the United Kingdom, and expressing the view that we really need globalization to achieve stronger economic growth. Something's got to happen, because economic growth maybe just it's trudging along to maybe, but I doubt it, 2.5% global GDP growth over the next couple of years. This is just the world we live in right now. We're just going to have to deal with it. It's way too many impediments in front of business and in front of consumers for GDP growth to be a lot faster than that at this moment in time. Now, speaking of Houston, by the way, if you're on the East Coast and you have not filled up your gas tank, I highly recommend it, because whether a shortage develops or not, they're going to raise prices. You can count on it. So we filled all our vehicles up yesterday, and we feel pretty good about that, because I think you'll see dramatically higher gasoline prices by the end of the week. I could be wrong, but hey, better safe than sorry, right? So anyway, the FDIC quarterly banking review came out late last week. We'll have in-depth coverage in this week's Banking on Profit, and of course the September edition of the Community Bank Stock Investor. But hitting the highlights, earnings were pretty healthy. We saw solid earnings growth in the nation's banking industry. Going to be about $180 billion in earnings. Not quite back to 2007 levels, but getting close. So now here's something that's interesting. Since the financial crisis, the number of banks in the United States so far are down by a third. That's that consolidation trend that we're always talking about, and it's been the real money-making opportunity that's driven the outsized gains in our focus bank stocks and in our main portfolio banks, and of course our bonus bank portfolio. All of those have done fantastic. It's primarily a result of this ongoing continuation trend. Yes, improving profit outlooks and strong credit has had something to do with it, but it's been primarily this M&A wave. It's not over, folks. It started in the 80s. We had back then around 17,000 financial institutions, if memory serves correctly. That's thrifts, savings institutions, banks, everything across the board. We're down to just about 6,000 now. That number is going to drop, I think, by at least half in the future. We have too many banks. We're going to see consolidation, and unless we do something really stupid, we should continue to profit from that consolidation. We're pretty careful about the prices that we pay, and that helps us avoid some of the risk that may develop in the sector and certainly magnifies the profit opportunity. So that should continue. This should continue to be a very profitable space, buying in small community bank stocks with sound loan portfolios at fantastic prices. So it's been working for well over 20 years for me. I imagine it's going to keep working for at least the next 20 years as well. So we're just going to kind of keep going along with that. So let's see here. Return on assets in the industry, interesting. They're getting back up to almost pre-crisis levels, but return on equities is not, and it's probably not going to because of the amount of capital that banks are now required to keep on hand. That's a fantastic thing for the industry as a whole. It prevents a lot of problems. I don't feel like banks should be able to lever 30 and 40 to 1 the way they were doing in 2006, 2007. Those capital levels are much higher in the industry right now, and it's just going to make it a little harder to earn a very high return on equity. We tend to focus a little bit more on return on assets anyway when we evaluate banks. So, but that's, if you happen to notice that, the ROEs are not going to get better or normalize any much faster than they are right now, and they're not going to catch up to the improvements in return on assets because the required capital levels are so much higher than they were before the banking crisis hit. Now, tying into that global growth at 2% thing, net interest margins are still low. They're going to stay low. They're not going to get any better for a while because I don't think that there's going to be enough room to make substantial increases in interest rates. Bankers are just going to have to deal with that. We had hoped that maybe we'd see that get a little better in 2017, but in the second quarter of the year, the margins actually compressed a little bit further. So the bank's just going to have to deal with that. There's no way to improve net interest margins at this point in time, except by doing something stupid. So don't do that. Just live with the lower margins for now. So, okay, this weekend, big weekend coming up. College football is back. We can go back to spending our Saturday afternoons with the midshipmen of the Naval Academy, the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame, and of course the University of Florida Gators. That's my adopted team when I moved down here to Florida. Had to decide between the UCF Knights, the Florida State Seminoles, and the University of Florida Gators. Now, everybody knows I love Gators, and I happen to look great in blue and orange, so we went with the Florida Gators. So we'll be watching them this Saturday when they take on Michigan in the first game of the season. Love college football, having a real hard time. I talked about this last year. Have a real hard time caring about the National Football League. They've made so many changes to the game. Not really interested in seeing the athletes, protesting and making all sorts of statements. You're not allowed to do it at your job. Be a really bad idea for me to do it at mine. I don't think they should either. Keep your politics off the field. But the game's boring to watch. There's too many penalties. And I understand you don't want the players to get hurt, but a lot of the things they do to make the game safer make the game very boring. So my simple solution has just been I don't watch very much National Football League anymore. My wife wants to give it one more shot, become Tampa Bay Buccaneer fans. I'm going to give it a try. I mean, everybody likes a pirate, right? And they do have that cool pirate ship in the end zone. So we'll try watching a couple Tampa Bay games. But mostly I'm going to stick with college football and go Navy. And I was asked not long ago, why do I always root for Navy? Am I a Naval Academy graduate? No, obviously not. But I grew up in Annapolis, Maryland, and back this was, pre 9/11. Us local kids, we had the run of the academy. Okay, we played on their football fields, their baseball fields. We'd sneak down into the gym and use the boxing equipment. And as long as we were reasonably well behaved, nobody said much. We jumped off the diving platforms, and it was cool to have the Naval Academy around when you were a kid growing up back then, because you pretty much had run of the campus, and it was just an enormous amount of fun. And I went to a lot of Navy football games as a kid because the stadium was right there. Didn't have to buy a ticket. You could sit up on the little grass hill outside the stadium and get a pretty decent view of the game. At least for a 7, 8-year-old kid, it was pretty exciting. So always been a Navy fan, always will be a Navy fan. Go Navy. So what else do we have? The Orioles. Now they're really trying hard to stay in this thing, folks. Playing 6-4 of their last 10 games. Just took 3 in a row from the dreaded Boston Red Sox. Love to see that, and they really thumped them in the first 2 games. Just outscored them by an enormous margin. So that was a lot of fun for me to watch. Now we've got a key series coming up against Seattle. Seattle is a serious contender also for the wild card. We're about 2 games out of that second wild card position, so every game counts. So we'll be watching a lot of baseball in addition to the college football. Right? I don't think my wife's gonna like me very much by the end of the week, but we'll see how that goes. Um, let's see what else is going on right now. Oh, the Miami Marlins, hottest team in baseball, and how could they not be with the way Mr. Stanton is hitting the ball. Giancarlo Stanton hit his 50th home run yesterday, has 108 RBIs already this year. It would kind of be cool to see the Miami community get energized about baseball once again. And Stanton and his teammates are doing their absolute best to make that happen. So hopefully they're about 4 games back of a wild card spot. Hopefully they can fight their way into one. That would be kind of cool to see. On the book front, nothing really stands out this week that we've read so far. I'll let you know if that changes. Now, we did just get this in the mail. This is a very cool book. Our friend Tobias Carlisle was instrumental in bringing this back out. And it's called Fortunes in Special Situations in the Stock Market. And these were written decades ago by a gentleman named Maurice Schiller. And they're something of a classic. I've read parts of them. I've never read them all at one sitting. So this just came on Saturday. I'm really looking forward to sitting down and reading it as the week progresses along. So anyway, that's all we got going on down here. We're kind of still dealing with the aftermath of what's going on down in Houston and Rockport and Corpus Christi, and there'll be some more questions to get answered and things to take care of as the week goes along. And I'm sure, my wife's going to be busy helping her dad sort out all the insurance policies and all that fun stuff that if you've ever been through a natural disaster, is the aggravating follow-up to the large property loss. So that's going to keep us busy. We got college football coming up. We got just a ton of good baseball going on this week, and there should be some pretty good new book releases over the next couple weeks. That'll keep me pretty busy. So anyway, next weekend is Labor Day weekend. We'll be keeping a pretty normal schedule, so everything should come along towards the end of the week as far as the banking on profit updates, the reading list. Thursday, Friday, whichever day works better, those will be out, and then we'll have the regular video next week. The weekend after that, wedding anniversary, publishing holiday, there won't be any copy of any kind on that weekend because I will be gone down to Sanibel Island to do a little recreating with the wife. So anyway, that's all for this week. I'll talk to you guys next week. Make it a fantastic week. Thank you.